Let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Yep, we can see now.
Okay, great. Then let's start. So before we start, do you guys have any questions or shall we start?
I think we can start soon. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with today we are going to discuss CloudFront, which is a CDN service from AWS. So what is CDN? It is Content Delivery Network. Okay, we'll see what CDN is. So today we'll discuss about CloudFront. We'll see what Amazon Certificate Manager is, and we'll talk about relational database service, and then we'll talk about Aurora. So let's start with CloudFront. Okay, so Amazon CloudFront is a fast content delivery network service that securely delivers data, videos, applications, and APIs to customers globally with low latency and high transfer speeds. Amazon CloudFront automatically maps network conditions and intelligently routes users' requests to the most performant AWS edge location to serve up cached or dynamic data. So what does it mean? See, so we are already aware of AWS regions and we are also aware of availability zones, right? So in addition to AWS regions and availability zones, AWS also has edge locations. Okay, so if I search here AWS edge locations, so let's see. Uh, so this is AWS infrastructure here. Okay, so the blue dots that you see here are edge locations. Okay, so edge locations are meant for just caching the data. Edge locations are not meant for hosting applications or database. So unlike availability zones, which are data centers built for running applications, databases, and whatnot, edge locations are specifically built for caching the data across the world. Okay, so in addition to availability zones, they have a lot of edge locations across the globe. Even in Asia Pacific, even in India region, I believe they have four edge locations. One is in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Kolkata, and the fourth I don't remember. So across the globe, they have several edge locations, and these edge locations are specifically built for caching the data. Okay, and these are not meant for hosting applications or databases. So what CloudFront is a content delivery network. So what it can help you with is, suppose maybe you are running a streaming service like Hotstar or Netflix, right? So maybe the origin servers where actually the web application is deployed, or maybe there might be web servers where actual video files are placed. But Netflix is something that is accessed globally. So maybe assume Netflix is being hosted somewhere in uh, North America, and people who are accessing from India region or from maybe Asia Pacific region, they would experience a lot of latency if they have to, if they try to access those video files from here, from Asia Pacific, because the latency would be too high. uh, those video files have to literally traverse across the world and then finally reach Asia Pacific countries. So so this CloudFront is great for serving static content. So if something that doesn't change that often, like maybe assume even the static websites, the one we have already seen, like this one. I think this one is not operational as of now, or maybe yes, it is not operational as of now. But this one. So this website is totally static in nature. It doesn't have any dynamic content in it. The HTML page, it's just static, and the images it references, those are also static. So now assume this this static website is being served from an S3 bucket, which is in Asia Pacific, Mumbai. So people who are trying to access from India region or maybe nearby region, they might not face any issue. But people who are accessing from other parts of the world, they might see, that website is loading a bit slow. Though this is a very small website and it's not heavy, probably even from other parts of the world it might be fine. But there might be other content, like maybe there is a PDF resume that I have uploaded somewhere on the S3 bucket. If somebody tries to download that PDF or downloads maybe a Word document that has all my professional history, it's a resume. So if resume is 10 MB in size, then that 10 MB file has to traverse from Asia Pacific Mumbai to that, and they might experience some slowness. So what we can do is we can deploy a CloudFront, we can deploy a CDN service. So CDN, it what it does is basically based on the based on the request, based on the location from which the request is coming, it automatically routes the request to the nearest edge location. And then what happens is when you make a request for a certain object, what a CDN service does is it detects, okay, this request is coming from somewhere, from maybe Asia Pacific Mumbai. So it will see in Asia Pacific Mumbai what are the nearest edge locations, and it will route the request to the nearest edge location. If the requested object is already cached in that edge location, then it is served directly from the edge location. If it is not cached already, then what happens is CloudFront makes a request to the origin server, and then basically serves that object to that requester, and also it caches it in the edge location. So what happens is any follow-up request for the same object, either by the same computer or maybe from other users from the same location, those will be directed to the same edge location. And since somebody has already made a request in the past for the same object and it has already been cached in that edge location, so what happens is the subsequent request for the same object will be served from that edge location, and it doesn't have to, the user do not have to contact the origin servers, which might be running very far from the user's location. So in this way, uh, we can distribute content via CDN service. What CDN service does is it caches different objects all across the globe, and based on where which location the request is coming from, it gets redirected to the nearest edge location. If the data is already cached, the data is served directly from the edge location. If it is not cached, the basically the CDN service requests the same object from the origin server, it caches it in the edge location and serves it to the user. The subsequent request from the same location would again be directed to the same edge location where the object is already cached, and the object is served directly from the edge location. So this improves a lot of performance, and basically the latency is reduced to a much greater extent, and all the users would feel that the content is being served at a much faster speed. So this is the overall concept of CDN. So there are other companies also which provides CDN service. One such company is Akamai. So you can search for Akamai. So this is very popular for content delivery network service. But so CloudFront is basically the same service, but it is AWS owned and built. So we'll talk about how we can deploy a CDN, or how we can deploy CloudFront in front of any origin server. The origin can be an EC2, the origin can be a web server running on an EC2 instance, or it can be a S3 bucket which is configured for static website hosting, and origin can even be an application load balancer. Okay. So any questions so far?
So, I have one question. So,
Mhm.
CloudFront is basically designed for multiple regions because we also have load balancer, right? Who routes the coming connection to the best possible easy, basically. Right?
Yes. See, basically, application load balancer is a regional service. When we create a load balancer, we create that load balancer in a specific region. Okay. So we'll say, for example, we want to, load balance incoming request to two availability zones. So what we'll do is we'll deploy a application load balancer in that specific region, and then we'll create two EC2 instances across two availability zones. And then instead of accessing the web servers directly, we'll give the end users the URL of the load balancer. So the users would basically send any request to that load balancer. And normally the load balancer, what it does is it does a round robin load balancing. One request it will send to one web server, the other request it will send to other web server. So it round robins the incoming request. So this load balancer is for primarily for two reasons. One is so that you can have high availability, because if you simply have one web server running on one availability zone, that what if that what if either the underlying physical hardware fails where that EC2 instance is running, or the entire availability zone goes down. So that that is why we have an application load balancer in front of a fleet of servers. Fleet of servers can be two or it can be four in number, maybe two running in one availability zones, two are running in other availability zones. It also automatically performs a health check, and if an EC2 instance has gone bad, then it stops sending traffic to that one and it load balances between the available instances. So this is primarily for for ensuring high availability. But CloudFront is a global service. So we'll see when we create a CloudFront distribution, we do not have to select a specific region because CloudFront is a global service. And basically these edge locations that I was talking about, that is spread across the globe, all these edge locations are part of the CloudFront, right? And CloudFront is mainly for high performance so that you can deliver content at a much reduced latency so that people can access your data much faster. If there will be no CDN, what will happen is certain parts of the world might be able to access your content at a good rate, but people who are accessing it far from the web server's location, those will experience a latency. So that is why CloudFront is there. So the difference between load balancer and CloudFront is CloudFront is mainly for improving the performance or reducing the latency, and load balancer is for distributing the incoming traffic across availability across web servers, maybe spread across availability zones. CloudFront is for reducing the latency, and load balancer is for ensuring high availability. So is this clear, Rahim?
So,
Yeah.
Shubham, in case, yeah, in case of you said that it will also be used to, like it will also cache load balancer uh, what we say details. Okay, so what how it helps in that case for load balancing? Because the other things we know that, yeah, static content, it will cache it and then it will like provide reduce the latency, but how in case of load balancer?
Uh, See, basically, even a load balancer can serve static content. That is one part, right? So it may happen that both the EC2 instances, that maybe there are two EC2 instances, both are serving maybe a static website, and there is a load balancer in front of them, and you make a request to the load balancer. So I mean, one thing is that the static content, it is great for static content. The other, assume there is no static content in it, and this application load balancer is load balancing between web servers which are actually running some dynamic website. Okay, it might be something like a web application, could be a net banking application, right? So net banking application is dynamic in nature. It has sign in functionality. When a particular user signs in, the content that is being displayed is very specific to that user, right? So there is nothing static in such web applications. So this is a very good question. That one is that, CloudFront is great for serving static content, but the other thing is it can also be used for serving dynamic content. Now the question might be that, see, dynamic content cannot be cached, right? Because it is dynamic in nature. Every request would be different, and whatever the, see, this HTML page gets rendered by the web server according to a lot of attributes. So there's nothing that we can cache around edge locations. But of course, so here, what might have, that you can do something like, say, for example, you might have some web application that is storing static content to on an S3 bucket, but the remaining is being served by an EC2 instance. So you have some web application running on an EC2 instance. That web application might be uploading some images onto an S3 bucket. So what you can do is you can configure in the CloudFront. You can say that anything which is basically ending in dot which is ending in .jpg or .png should be sent to this S3 bucket endpoint, and anything which is not ending in .jpg or .png should be sent to the application load balancer. And whatever is being returned by the application load balancer, do not cache it. So we can explicitly disable caching for maybe for dynamic content, because of course there's no point in caching dynamic content. So we can have, for a single CloudFront distribution, we can have two origins. One origin could be an S3 bucket, the other origin could be a load balancer. We can say that anything that is ending with star.jpg should be fetched from this S3 bucket endpoint, or anything which is other than this, assuming that something like .php, so index.php or anything else.php. So these PHP pages are rendered by the web server based on the PHP code, and each time it could be different. So we can say that anything other than JPEG or PNG should be fetched from the load balancer, but do not cache it. Now there might be a question that if you're not caching dynamic content, then why to even serve it, right, via CloudFront? Why don't we let the users directly hit the load balancer instead of going via the CloudFront? So the answer to this is that, see, what happens is, assume your load balancer is in Asia Pacific Mumbai region, okay, and your users are in somewhere in North Virginia or somewhere in US region. So now there are two options, okay. So one option is we can give them the load balancer URL directly. So people who are in North Virginia region or somewhere in US, they will hit the load balancer URL where the load balancer resides. The load balancer resides in Asia Pacific Mumbai. So the traffic going from the end user's computer, which is in US, till till load balancer, which is in Mumbai, that will go over the public internet, right? That is a public network. And instead, if we do something like, if we deploy a CDN in front of the application load balancer, then what will happen is, whenever that user will hit that URL, what it will do is CloudFront will automatically detect that, okay, it is coming from US region. So whatever edge locations are there in that US region, it will direct to one of the edge locations. Of course, since we have explicitly disabled caching for any of the dynamic content, what will happen is the edge location would basically make the same request to the origin server. Origin is what? Application load balancer. So basically the edge location would make a request to the load balancer and try to get the same request which the initial user made. So it will basically, the edge location will make the same request on behalf of the user and get it from the load balancer and then serve it to that end user. So now the traffic that is flowing from end user to edge location, that is over public network or internet. But the edge location and the load balancer is connected via AWS backbone network. So AWS backbone network is the private network owned by AWS, which is, gigabit Ethernet. I believe they have some optical fiber connectivity. So here, instead of traversing, the traffic would flow from US region directly to the load balancer. It has to traverse a lot longer on the public internet. Instead, in case if you decide to distribute even the dynamic content, uh, if you decide to serve dynamic content via CloudFront, what will happen is this I mean, the traffic that traverses over the internet would be much lesser. So in a way, it will improve the latency. Still, it would improve the latency. So, I mean, does it answer your question, Niyati?
Yes, Shubham.
Okay, great. So let's see how we can deploy a CloudFront distribution. So this is a graphical representation of CDN. So here we can see there are a lot of edge locations and there is a origin server. This origin server can be a web server running on an EC2 instance, or it can be an S3 bucket, or it can even be an application load balancer. It's totally up to you. Okay, and here we see that a lot of client computers are there which are making a request for an object. So since all these client computers are placed in a same location, what will happen is, uh, you know, one initially one user would have made a request for a certain object. It so assume this is the computer which is making the request. So since it is coming from this location and the edge location nearest to this location is this one, it will be basically sent to this edge location. This edge location will see I do not have this object in my cache. So this edge location will make a request to the origin server. It will get that object, it will cache it in its edge location, and then it will send it back to the client computer who made the request. Then subsequent client computers who are requesting for the same object edge location will directly serve it from the cache. Okay.
Okay.
So here they are saying to deliver content to end users with lower latency, Amazon CloudFront uses a global network of 216 points of presence, which has 205 edge locations and 11 regional edge caches. So what are regional edge caches? You already know what edge locations are. So they are saying they have 216 points of presence, out of which 205 are edge locations and 11 are regional edge caches. So so regional edge caches sits between your origin web server and global edge locations that serve traffic directly to your viewers. So who are viewers? Viewers are the end users who are making the request for the content. Okay, so regional edge locations sit between origin web server and global edge locations. So it is global edge locations which serve the viewer's request. So any viewer who is trying to request for an object, it is the edge location which serves that request. But there are some regional edge locations or regional edge caches which sit between the edge locations and the origin web server. Because what may happen is, as the popularity of your objects reduce, individual edge locations may evict those objects to make room for more popular content, because even these edge locations would not have infinite uh, cache size. So the less popular objects they may have to evict over time, because there are more popular objects that they have to cache. So they have to prioritize more popular objects in the edge locations, because it is edge locations who are responsible for serving the viewer request, and they can't cache all the objects. So what they may have to do is they may have to evict certain less popular objects. So regional edge caches have larger cache as compared to edge global edge locations, and whatever is being evicted by the global edge locations, that can be kept cached in the regional edge location, so that if at all you know something is evicted from the global edge location, instead of instead of requesting the same object from the origin web server, these global edge locations can actually request the object from the regional edge cache. Okay, so this helps keep more of your content closer to your viewers, reducing the need for CloudFront to go back to your origin web server and improving overall performance for viewers. So is this clear?
Shubham, one question. Edge location by means region? Like
No,
one
no,
region?
it's see, one region would have several availability zones. Similarly, it will also have several edge locations. Okay.
Okay.
So there now when it comes to edge locations, there will be some certain global edge locations, and there will be some regional edge locations. Okay, so global edge locations are responsible for responding to viewer request, but regional edge locations do not respond directly to end users request. They simply
Okay.
cache the less popular objects. Okay, so does it make sense? So each
Yes.
AWS region will have certain edge locations and certain availability zones. Availability zones are data centers built for hosting and running applications, databases, and whatnot. And edge locations are meant for just for hosting or serving content. These are only meant for caching the content or distributing the content. So when it comes to edge locations, there will be global edge locations and there will be certain regional edge locations. So global edge locations are responsible for responding to viewer request. Regional edge locations, they sit between global edge locations and your origin server, because these regional edge locations have larger cache, so they can store some less popular objects. So when you got the idea, right? What I'm trying to say.
Right.
Okay, great. So now so here we can see the same question that you were asking, Niyati. So here we can see we have certain users, right? And we have a CloudFront distribution. Okay. So CloudFront distribution would have a ugly URL, just like an S3 bucket endpoint. So you see that when we enabled static website hosting on an S3 bucket, the URL that we got is bit ugly, and we would like to use a user friendly URL. So the same case, when you deploy a CloudFront distribution, the URL that you get for accessing that CloudFront distribution is ugly. So typically what you would do is you would create a Route 53 hosted zone, and you will create a hosted zone for your domain, and then you would say that anything that is coming to maybe niyativeb.xyz, this should be sent to this CloudFront distribution URL. So that is why we have Amazon Route 53 in place. So there are certain users which are accessing a web application over a URL that in fact is being resolved to Amazon CloudFront distribution URL. And now here a CloudFront distribution can have more than one origins. Okay, so here in our case we have two origins. One is a S3 bucket, the other is a load balancer. Okay, so here we can define in the CloudFront distribution that we can say that, see, normally if you have worked with WordPress, so in WordPress, if you go to var www/html, you will see these two folders inside it. And these two folders are responsible. I mean, these two folders usually hold static content. Okay. So here what we have done is we have told CloudFront distribution that any request which is basically for the domain /wp content star, this should be fetched from, we are not sending anything. It is the CloudFront, it is the edge location which is making a origin request. See, when we talk about CloudFront, there are two things that you will see across the documentation. One is viewer request. Okay, so viewer request is the end user making a request to the CloudFront distribution. This is called as a viewer request. And there is a origin request. So origin request is the request which the edge location makes to the origin server. Okay, so these are two kinds of request. One is viewer request. So viewer request is the request which the end user is making to a CloudFront distribution or to an edge location. And origin request is the request which edge location makes to the origin server. So here what is happening is the users via Route 53 is being directed to a CloudFront distribution. In CloudFront distribution, we have set up a behavior. We have told that, if viewer is requesting for anything which is basically WP slash content star, then the origin is this S3 bucket and not the load balancer. So basically, whatever object is being requested, this should be served. This should be served from the S3 bucket. So what will happen is Amazon CloudFront will make a request to that S3 bucket. It will cache that object and serve it to the end user. The same thing is if the request is coming for any object ending in .php. .php identifies that it's a PHP page which gets rendered dynamically, so it can't be cached. So what will happen is Amazon CloudFront will make the same request to the load balancer. The load balancer will in turn return the rendered page to the CloudFront. CloudFront will not cache it and it will directly send it to the viewer. So is it clear, Neti, now?
Yeah, Shubham.
Okay, great. So now let's try to. And before we do a lab on CloudFront, let's talk about Amazon Certificate Manager. So Amazon Certificate Manager is a service that lets you easily provision, manage, and deploy public and private SSL certificates. Okay, and these public and private certificates that you provision via Amazon Certificate Manager, you can use it. See, there are two kinds of certificates you can provision via ACM. So one is public certificates. So public certificates are the certificates that are typically installed on internet facing applications. Okay, so maybe any internet banking application or any net banking application. When you try to access it, you access it via HTTPS and there is a certificate that you see, right? So those are typically public certificates. In your own customer environment, you might have seen your internal applications or basically the application on the intranet. Those applications will not have public certificates typically. There will be some private CA, and whenever even in our customer, we have certain SAP systems. Those SAP systems have certificates installed. So those certificates are not signed by public CAs, but those certificates are signed by private CA, which is managed and run by customers. So what we do is we create a CSR, we send it to them, we ask them to get it signed. So people responsible for running that private CA, they basically take that CSR, get it signed, and they send it to us. So those are private certificates, which these certificates are trusted within the intranet. But if I try to install this certificate elsewhere on an internet facing application, all these browsers do not trust any private certificates. So Amazon ACM, Amazon Certificate Manager, is a service using which you can provision public certificates also and private certificates also. So for generating private certificates, you have to create a private CA in Amazon ACM. So for creating a private CA within ACM, it is chargeable. Okay, and they charge you per month for one private CA. So if you are running maybe a number of private CAs which are signing different internal certificates, so you have to pay it accordingly. So what, in short, ACM lets you create a private CA so that you don't have to manage your infrastructure with respect to private CAs. You can have a private CA within Amazon Certificate Manager, and you can use the private CA within ACM to create and provision certificates for your internal infrastructure. And there are public certificates, and these public certificates that you create in ACM, you can install these public certificates on application load balancers, or maybe even on CloudFront distribution that we will see. Today we will create a CloudFront distribution, and we will create a public certificate through ACM, and we will use that certificate in the CloudFront distribution. So the public certificates that we create via ACM, those are free of cost. You do not have to pay anything for creating public certificates, the public certificates that you create within Amazon Certificate Manager can only be used with ACM integrated uh, ACM integrated AWS resources. So there are some AWS resources which are integrated with ACM, and you can use the public certificates only with these resources. So one is application load balancer. If you want to, install an SSL certificate on a load balancer, what you can do is you can provision a public certificate through ACM, and then you can use that certificate on the load balancer, and you don't have to pay anything at all. Similarly, you can also create a public certificate for CloudFront distribution, and we can use it there. We will do it today. But for generating private certificates, you have to first configure a private CA. You have to pay a monthly fees to AWS for running that private CA, and once that private CA is configured, you can start provisioning private certificates also. Those private certificates you can install on your applications running on EC2 instances or wherever you feel like installing them. So you have to pay a monthly fees for running private CA plus plus the private certificates that you issue using that private CA. You also have to pay uh, for those private certificates, but public certificates are free to use. So we will not be doing this private CA stuff in this course, but we'll see how we can create a public certificate and how we can use that public certificate in a CloudFront distribution. Okay. So at a high level, any questions on ACM? We will create a certificate and we'll see that in action. Okay. Anyways, you don't have to, go in deep dive on ACM. You just need to know that what ACM is. It lets you create public certificates and private certificates too. And public certificates are free to use. We don't have to pay any kind of fees to AWS, but public certificates cannot be exported and used elsewhere. Okay, that is an important thing that you have to note, that you can't do something like you can like if you are planning to generate a public certificate in ACM and then you think that you can export it and you can even configure it on a web application which is running on premise. So that is not possible. You can only use those certificates with resources which are integrated with ACM. Okay, so let's do it.
So, Shubham, sorry, Shubham.
Yes,
Yeah.
Simon.
So these ACM certificates are similar to what we have, like the PEM file, right? Means the format is unreadable to us.
No, actually, PEM file is readable, right? You can open it in a text file, but of course, this is in, I believe it's in some base64 encoded format, right?
Got it.
Let's
Okay.
So let's say I say Kotak Mahindra Bank net banking. So the kind of certificate that you see here, this is a public certificate, right? This one. So it says issued to netbanking.kotak.com. It is issued by Interest Certification Authority. So these are public certificates. You can generate similar certificates through ACM, and then those certificates are trusted by all the browsers on the internet. So anybody who is trying to access our internet facing application, he would not, he would not see some kind of a weird warning message from the browser that this certificate is not trusted. Okay. So
Got it.
let's
Yeah,
do it.
because sometimes, like we see, like for some browsers, we have this warning message, like the SSL certificate is expired. So I think
Yeah, either it is expired or it is signed by a certification authority which is not trusted by the browser,
okay,
right?
got it. Yeah.
So we'll do it for our domain, okay? And one important thing that you have to notice, if you are planning to use these certificates with CloudFront, then you have to provision that certificate in North Virginia region. If you're planning to use a certificate with a load balancer, then you can create it in that specific region where your load balancer is. But if you're planning to use a public certificate issued by ACM on a CloudFront, then you have to provision that certificate in North Virginia region. So that is why I have switched to
Okay.
North Virginia, and then we'll search for Amazon
So Shubham,
certificate
why
manager.
only North Virginia for CloudFront?
Actually, see, North Virginia is the oldest AWS region, and since CloudFront is a global service, it is not a regional service. We'll see when we navigate to CloudFront, this specific region this specific area would say global. It will not let you select any specific region, so they have to somehow configure it on a specific place so that they know whenever you're trying to associate a certificate with a CloudFront distribution, they should know from which specific region they have to look. It should not be that you can create it in any AWS region. So maybe it might take a lot of time to figure out where your certificate is because it's a global service. It's not a regional service. So that is why they have kept it like this maybe. So this CloudFront is a global service. So any certificate that you want to associate with CloudFront, you provision that in North Virginia so that whenever you try to,
Okay.
associate it, they know where can it be. So they know that it can only be in North Virginia and they will try to search that certificate for you there. Okay.
Okay, got it.
So let's search for Amazon Certificate Manager, or I think we can search for ACM also. So here we can see it's a certificate manager. It can provision, manage and deploy SSL TLS certificates. So let's do it. So here we have two options: provision certificates and private certificate authority. So I will say provision certificates. Now it is asking whether you want to create a public certificate or you want to create a private certificate. For private certificate, of course, you have to first configure a private CA and then you have to pay a monthly fees for that. And but that is not what we are doing here. So we'll request a public certificate. Okay. So I will say request a certificate and then it is asking me for which domain I want to request for a certificate. So I want to request a certificate for this domain, shubhamjoshi.xyz. You can also add other domains here in the same certificate. You might know about this subject alternative name, right? So a subject alternative name, you can specify other domains also. I hope maybe let's say in case of google.com, if you see the certificate here, it says issued to, this is wildcard here, star.google.com, but I believe they would have something like this also. Subject alternative names. So they have, these are a lot of other domains also. So basically the same certificate is valid for other domains also because they have mentioned all those domains as part of subject alternative names. So I believe they have this functionality here also. So you can add here other domains also, or you can even create a wildcard. That is also fine. So they are saying type the fully qualified domain name of the site you want to secure with an SSL certificate. Use an asterisk to request the wildcard certificate to protect several sites in the same domain. So that is not our case. I will simply generate a SSL certificate for my Apex domain. So I will say next. So now this is something that is common with every certification authority. When you try to request for an SSL certificate, they will try to verify your domain ownership. They would, ask you, they would need a way to verify that whether you are actually the owner of that domain or not. So there are two ways of doing it. Either one is DNS validation. They would ask you to make certain records in your DNS. They will say create a TXT type of record, and this should be the record name and this should be the value. And once you create it, then we will verify whether you have really created that record or not. And once we have verified it, then we can issue this certificate to you. Or the other way is email validation. So they will see who, I mean, when you try to register a domain with any domain registrar, you specify a email ID also. So they will try to send a validation email to that email address, and then you may have to click on verify. Some kind of a link might be there on which you click it, and then that's how you verify the ownership of the domain. In my case, I will simply select DNS validation. I will say next, and I will say review, and I will say confirm and request. So here it says request is in progress and validation status is pending validation. So currently they are validating whether we are the rightful owner of shubhamjoshi.xyz or not. So they have given us this DNS configuration file. And once we have configured our DNS records as per this configuration file, then they will be able to validate the ownership of this domain. So I will download this and we'll see what we have to maintain in our DNS records. So they have told us that that record name should be this, record type should be CNAME, and the record value should be this. Okay. So sometimes some certification authority would ask you to create a record type of TXT. So we will create TXT type of record. In that case, in our case, they are requesting us to create a CNAME record. The record name should be this, the value should be this. So let's do it. I already have my hosted zone in Route 53, so we can easily do it. So Route 53 is also a global service. Here you can see it is global. Route 53 does not require region selection because it's a global service. So Route 53 and CloudFront, IAM, all these are global services and VPCs. Yes, S3 also is global, but the buckets that we create inside S3, those are very much region specific.
So, Shubham, is there any document or any from AWS which will tell us which is domain specific, which is not? I mean,
I think there must be. Yes, there will be. Of course, if you try to search it, I think you will get it. But I think it's not very important to know which services are regional and which are global. And there will not be much global services. The few I remember is Route 53, CloudFront, IAM. These are for sure global services. Even S3 would be a global service, I believe, because when you navigate to S3, you do not have to specifically select a region. There might be one or two more global services, but that is not important from even exam perspective and even in real life. So I mean, do not bother too much about it. Okay. So let's create a record. I'll say create record and I will say they are saying that create a record with name this. So I will copy this and I will paste it here. This thing is already appended, so no need to do anything, right? So I just simply copied the subdomain here. I pasted it here. This is already there, and the record value is this. So I will I will. Okay, let's do it this way. I'm copying it, and I'll paste it here. Okay, and record type is what? CNAME. And TTL we can keep it as 1 minute. So let's create a record. Okay, so record has been created. So hopefully in some time they will be able to validate that we have made the DNS records as requested, and then they will be able to issue us the certificate. So let's navigate to North Virginia again where we made that request. So I'll go to certificate manager, and then currently it is saying pending validation. Let's refresh it. So it is still pending validation. It may take some 1 or 2 minutes of time. And they can also auto renew your certificates if the domain is managed through Route 53. If you're not using Route 53 for managing your DNS records, then ACM cannot auto renew your certificates. So as of now, we see renewal eligibility is ineligible. I think it should be able to detect that it is hosted on Route 53. So renewal eligibility should become eligible, but we'll see if that is the case or not. Okay, so status is issued and in use. No, currently this is not in use and this type is Amazon issued. And regarding this renewal eligibility, not sure, maybe this is applicable for private certificates which are provisioned via private CA running within ACM. So looks like the private certificates can be auto renewed if we are running a private CA, but for now, at least for public certificate, looks like that is not the case. But here we can see that it has detected that we have made the DNS records and it has validated it and it has issued us. Let's see where we can use it. Now, either you can use this certificate with any application load balancer running in North Virginia region, or we can even associate this with a CloudFront distribution. So let's see how we can do it. For now, let's go back to that S3 bucket that we created for static website hosting. So here we can see S3 is also a global service. Okay, S3 does not require region selection. So if I go back here, so this is the no, this one. So this is the S3 bucket, and now we can see if static website hosting is enabled or not. Let's see. So static website hosting is enabled, and hosting type is bucket hosting. I'll copy this website endpoint and I will try to access it. I think we will not be able to access it. Okay, we are able to access it. Looks like we have already made the objects public. So what we might have done is we might have just selected all these objects, and what we would have done is uh, we might have clicked make public, and that's why these objects are already public and we are able to access this website. Okay. So, but when we serve our S3 website over CloudFront, the source S3 bucket doesn't have to be public. Okay. So let's see first if there is a bucket ACL which allows public access or not. So, or an easier way to fix it is we can simply go to permissions and we'll enable block all public access. Okay. So I am turning this on, and if I save this, I will say confirm. So now all kind of public access has been revoked, and if I try to access the same website endpoint, I will not be able to access it. I think looks like it is cached, but we can see this is 403 forbidden because we have disabled all kind of public access. So now let's see how we can serve it via a CloudFront distribution. And the good part with serving content through CloudFront is that you don't have to make your S3 bucket objects public. And let's see how we can do it. For now, we'll see whether or not there is a bucket ACL associated with this bucket. If I scroll it down under permissions, then I see there is no bucket policy associated with this bucket. Okay. So now what we'll do is I will navigate to CloudFront. Okay. It doesn't matter from which region you are trying to access CloudFront because it's a global service. Okay. So I will simply say CloudFront. So I will create a CloudFront distribution. And now it is saying choose an AWS origin or enter your origin's domain name. So your origin can be even a web server running on premise. That web server might have a domain name. You can specify that domain name here, or that origin could be an EC2 instance where there is a web server installed, there is a web application running, and that web server might also have a domain name. There might be a either a Route 53 hosted zone which is pointing to that EC2 instance. So basically, in short, you have to put the origin domain name in case it is not a AWS origin. In our case, the origin is a AWS origin because that is an S3 bucket. So choose origin domain. I can select Amazon S3, so which is the S3 bucket. In our case, this is the right S3 bucket. So I have selected this. So this is the origin for my CloudFront distribution. Origin path is optional. If you want to maybe in this bucket there is a folder, and inside that folder you have that content that you want to serve via CloudFront. Then you have to specify the path here, that within the origin, if there is a specific path from inside of which you want to serve the content, then you can specify it here. In our case, that is not the case. Directly within the S3 bucket, we have our content which needs to be served. So we will leave this blank. OK. So enter a name for this origin. As I already told you that CloudFront distribution can have multiple origins, and based on patterns, it can identify from which origin it has to fetch that object. Like star.php would be application load balancer, star.jpg would be S3 bucket. So each origin has to be identified by some origin name. So in my case, I'm using this. You can put your own anything also. I think it has already proposed itself based on the S3 bucket endpoint. It has proposed the name of the origin like this, but you can also put anything, whatever you feel like. Now this is important. This is important from exam perspective also. So it says S3 bucket access. Use a CloudFront origin access identity to access the S3 bucket. So we have two options. Either we say do not use origin access identity. If we are not using origin access identity, then bucket must allow public access. OK. If we say yes, use origin access identity, then what will happen is, see, what will happen is what is origin access identity? So origin access identity is some kind of a gibberish value which is assigned to this CloudFront distribution. OK. And that origin access identity will be used as a principal in the S3 bucket policy. So if you remember the last class where we create a bucket policy, in that here we can see, let's try to do it, S3 bucket policy generator. Okay, so if I go here and if I select S3, so here you see principal, right? So when we wanted to create a S3 bucket policy which allows public access, we entered principal as star. OK. But in our case, since we want to serve the content via CloudFront and we do not want our objects to be public, then what we can do is we can generate a origin access identity for our CloudFront distribution, and that origin access identity can be used as a principal here. And we can say that only origin access identity can perform get object on this bucket. OK, so is it clear now what I'm trying to say, or not yet?
Shubham, the origin access identity will be accessed by whom?
See, origin access identity is tagged to our CloudFront distribution. OK, and that origin access identity we will use in S3 bucket policy. We will use that origin access identity as a principal. OK, and we will say this origin access identity is allowed. Which action? Get object action is allowed. To whom it is allowed? To this origin access identity. This origin access identity is tagged to whom? This CloudFront distribution. So what it essentially means is this CloudFront distribution can basically make requests to our S3 bucket and get the objects. OK.
But Shubham, this CloudFront distribution is public, right? Which will be
Yeah. Yes, it is CloudFront. Basically, once we create a CloudFront distribution, this CloudFront distribution will have a URL. OK. And when you hit that CloudFront URL, basically you are only making a request to CloudFront, not to S3 bucket. When you make a request to CloudFront, it will see that whether it already has that cached or not. If it is not cached, then it will try to make a get request to that object. It will try to make a get request to that S3 bucket and try to download that object. And why CloudFront is able to download that object? Because CloudFront is associated with the origin access identity, and that origin access identity is allowed what action? Get object action.
So if my CloudFront distribution is public, as you said, and then what difference does it make if my S3 objects are public or if I'm accessing it through cloud distribution? That is,
See, basically, normally, if you enable bucket in your S3 bucket, if you enable public access, then what may happen is then people can bypass that CloudFront and they can simply hit that S3 bucket website endpoint, right? Since I have kept all the objects public, or there is a bucket policy which allows public access, then what may happen is people might not use CloudFront URL. They may simply, hit the website endpoint and they might be able to download it. If you do not allow public access on the S3 bucket, then then there must be a way CloudFront should be able to download the object on your behalf. See, viewer or the end user is making a request to CloudFront, not to S3 bucket, right? So it is making a request to CloudFront. If it is not already cached in CloudFront, CloudFront itself has to request that object from that S3 bucket. Since S3 bucket does not have any bucket policy which allows public access, CloudFront will be denied. So CloudFront will basically get 403 forbidden. So CloudFront will not be able to request that object. So what we have to do is we have to allow CloudFront to be able to download objects. Okay, and how we can allow? There are two ways. Either you keep the bucket as public, then it doesn't matter whether CloudFront is requesting that object or any other user is requesting the object. Or to make it safer, so that people do not bypass CloudFront, what you can do is you can keep the bucket private, and you create a origin access identity. You
Got it.
associate that origin access identity with CloudFront. In the bucket policy, we will say that only this origin access identity can get objects from this bucket. Okay.
Got it. Right.
Yeah. So let's do it. So I'm saying, yes, I want to use an origin access identity. So you can say create new origin access identity. So it is created. Now here there are two options. The bucket policy has to be updated, wherein we have to specify this origin access identity is allowed. What action is allowed? Get object action is allowed. So either you can update the bucket policy yourself, or you can let them update the bucket policy. So I don't want to update it myself because I don't want to go through the pain of creating bucket policy myself. So I will say yes, use origin access identity, and yes, update the bucket policy as well. We have already verified there is no bucket policy as of now. So I am creating an origin access identity for this CloudFront distribution, and then I'm asking them to update the bucket policy on my behalf. And yes, update the bucket policy. And once this CloudFront distribution is created, we will see that the bucket policy has been updated. And there we will see that origin access identity is allowed. What action? S3 get object action is allowed for this origin access identity. So this might be an exam question also, that you want to allow CloudFront distribution to be able to access S3 objects. So how you can do it in a secure manner, wherein people should not be able to access the S3 website endpoint. So the answer is, we can create an origin access identity. We can update the bucket policy in a way which states that this origin access identity is allowed. Get object action. Okay. Now here leave other options, because if we go through each option, then it is a separate discussion in itself. But you have to just you have to see the important options. What are the important options? The important option is you have to select the right origin for your CloudFront distribution. We have already done it. We have selected the S3 website endpoint here, and we have told CloudFront that we are going to use an origin access identity, and then we have generated an origin access identity, and we have told AWS to update the bucket policy on our behalf. And then if we scroll it down, so viewer protocol policy. So you want to enable HTTP and HTTPS both on the CloudFront distribution, or you want to just enable HTTPS only, or you want to redirect all HTTP to HTTPS. A good option is this one. So basically both the things are enabled. So normally people would use the HTTPS URL, but if somebody is explicitly entering HTTP, then it will be redirected to HTTPS. Okay. So from security point of view, this option makes sense. So I'm selecting redirect HTTP to HTTPS. Now coming to allowed HTTP methods. So whether you want to allow get or head method only, or you want to allow get head or options method, or you want to allow get head options, put, patch, delete options. Okay. So HTTP protocol in itself is a big subject, you know. So if you try to study how HTTP protocol works, so there is, you know, you'll get to know a ton of details about that. There will be an that HTTP protocol is stateless. There will be something called as HTTP request, which the client would make to the web server. Then in response to that HTTP request, that web server is going to respond with an HTTP response. In the HTTP request, there will be certain request headers, and in response to that HTTP, and even there will be a request headers, there will be a body also. And when the web server returns a response, even that HTTP response will have certain response headers and the body. Okay. So leave all those things, but important thing is, see, if it is static, the origin is static, then we don't need these things, get head options. We can either go with get or head, or we can go with get head or options. Okay. So this option you would have to allow in case you have something like the source or the origin is a dynamic web application, something that, you know, normally see what happens is, if you see any web application, like maybe a net banking application, where when you access it, you have to put your username and password, and then you click sign in. So what essentially happens is, when you click sign in, there is an HTTP post request that is made to the server. So there are a lot of HTTP methods or HTTP requests. You can say, some people say HTTP verbs, or some people say HTTP methods. Some may say that different kinds of HTTP request. So one could be a get request. So get request is the simple of HTTP request, wherein you specify what object you want to request, or what. So it could be something like, typically when we access a static website, we make a HTTP get request to the web server, and then the in response to that get request, that web server responds with an object, whatever we have requested, right? So depending upon how the web application has been configured, there might be different HTTP methods that are called. Like when, for example, when we sign in, so these username and credentials are sent to the web server via HTTP post method. Okay. So similarly, if we talk about RESTful APIs, so RESTful APIs will also have certain, you know, some certain HTTP methods enabled. And you might have heard about, you know, RESTful APIs. So what RESTful APIs are, these are some kind of a endpoint. These will be some HTTP endpoints, and you can access that HTTP. You can make API calls to that HTTP endpoint, and you can specifically call HTTP methods to do certain actions on that web server end. So maybe you can uh, there might be one HTTP put method which creates a record on the database, or however that API is programmed. So just, I mean, we don't have to go into that because that is very developer specific, and we don't have to go in depth there. But the important thing to note here is that it depends, if the origin is a static origin like an S3 bucket, then we can choose either of them. Or if it is, the origin is something like a load balancer or a dynamic web application running on an EC2 instance, then we have to select get head options, put, patch, delete. So in our case, this is just S3 bucket. So we will simply use get and head. And here there is something called as cache key and origin request. Okay. So they have created some cache policies for us. These are Amazon managed cache policies. Okay. So what these are, if we scroll it down, we will see that these are some managed cache policies that are created by AWS. So one is caching optimized. This is for if your origin is S3. So caching disabled. This is also another caching policy which AWS has created. You will use this policy probably for what kind of origins? Probably for origins which are dynamic in nature, like an application load balancer or an EC2 instance which is running a web application, right? Which is basically a web application which is dynamic. So in that case, probably you will use caching disabled cache policy. So so this cache policy, uh, we can see what this cache policy is. If we see view policy, it will tell us what this cache policy is. Okay, so cache policy in this caching optimized cache policy, headers are not being cached. Okay, cookies are also not being cached, and query strings are also not being cached. Okay, so basically the only thing that the CloudFront sees is the object name. I think this will make more sense. So see here, if I try to zoom it, so these two are HTTP GET request. Okay, so how we can say this is a GET request or it is a GET method, because in the name itself it is written GET. So whatever we are seeing here, these are HTTP request headers. Okay, these are what? HTTP request headers. So we are seeing here two types of HTTP GET request. Okay, and each of them that you see here, these are different HTTP headers. One is host header. That is something you are already aware of, right? When we created application load balancer, we configured application load balancer to route to different target groups based on host header. We told that if host header is cv.shubhamjoshi.xyz, then send it to cv target group. If it is hireme.shubhamjoshi.xyz, then send it to hire me target group, right? So so host header is one such request headers. Okay, so similar to host header, there are other headers also, like user agent header, accept header, accept language header, cookie, and referrer. So referrer is something like who referred to this specific to this specific website. So here if we see caching optimized, so caching optimized doesn't include any headers, doesn't include any cookies, and does not include any query strings. Okay, so what are query strings? You already are aware. Something like if I type this example.com slash about us.html or .php, and then we have something like maybe whatever parameter 1 is equal to value 1 and parameter 2 is equal to value 2. So these are nothing but query string parameters. Okay, so here in case of caching optimized, headers no headers are being cached, or in a way what I'm trying to say is, see, caching policy decides that what would be the key policy, what would be the cache key. Let's see what cache key is. If I see here, the cache key determines whether a viewer request to a CloudFront edge location results in a cache key. See, cache key is a unique identifier for every object which is cached in an edge location. Okay, and see, at least this is clear that what cache key is, right? So every object that is cached on an edge location will have a unique identifier called as cache key. Okay, and this cache key is basically, so uh, whenever a whenever an edge location receives a viewer request, so it will try to generate a cache key for that request. If there is already an object cached with the same cache key, then it will return the response. If basically if edge location receives a viewer request and it tries to generate a cache key, and the cache key is, and there is no object cached with the same cache key, then it is a cache miss, right? If it is a cache miss, then CloudFront will basically make a request to the origin server. It will basically get that object, it will cache it, and it will serve to the viewer or the end computer. So far what we have discussed is we know what CloudFront is. There are several edge locations. In edge locations, the objects are cached, and each object that is cached on an edge location that has a unique identifier called as cache key. Okay, so you will see in an edge. I mean, we can't see it, of course, but every object that is cached in an edge location, each object will have a unique identifier associated with that cached object. That unique identifier is called as cache key.
Cache
Okay,
key.
so yeah, so whenever a viewer make a request for an object, it will try to generate a cache key for the viewer request. If the cache key if the cache key generated is matching with the with any object, which is, I mean, if the cache key that is generated and there is already an object with the same cache key, then CloudFront know that it's the same object being requested and it is already cached. So it will basically send it directly from the edge location. If it tries to generate the cache key and it sees that there is no object with the same cache key, then it is a cache miss. It will try to again make a request to the origin server. It will try to get that object, cache it, and then send it back to the viewer. So there is something called as cache hit and cache miss. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. A cache hit is something like a viewer makes a request. This CloudFront edge location makes a, generates a what cache key. There is already an object cached with the same object with the same cache key. It's a cache hit. If it tries to generate a cache key and there is no object already cached with the same cache key, then it's a cache miss. Okay, so now this this cache policy that we attach, okay, the cache policy that we attach, that determines how this cache key is computed. Okay, so here in our case, if I scroll it here, so cache key settings, headers none, cookies none, and query strings none. Okay, so this means that none of the headers or none of the cookies or none of the query strings are being used to compute what cache key. So basically here, if we go back to this understanding cache key, so these are two different HTTP requests. Okay, one is this HTTP request and this is other HTTP request. Why are they different? Because if you see here, uh, the object is same. Okay, the object is same. See, what is the object? Object is basically this. This is the object. Okay, this is the object which the viewer is requesting. And what are these things? These are what? These are query string parameters that you see here. Okay, these are query string parameters. What is the object being requested? This is the object being requested. Okay, so in both these HTTP requests, the object being requested is same, but it is different. Why? Because the query string parameters are different. This is the query string parameters and this is query string parameters. Both are different, right? And even if you see, certain request headers are also different. In our case, if we see the referrer is different in this case. In the first HTTP request, the referrer is news.example.com. In the second HTTP request, the referrer is rss.news.example.com. So though these HTTP requests are for the same object, but these are different because the attributes are different. The query string parameters are different. The request headers are different, right? One such header that is different is referrer. We can see the referrer is different for both these requests. Okay, so now what happens is, based on the caching policy here, we have told that do not consider headers, right? Do not consider cookies, do not consider query string. So if this is the case, if this is the caching policy attached, then what will happen is, the only thing that is considered is the object name and not other attributes. So essentially both these HTTP requests will result in the same cache key. Okay, because we have told in the caching policy that headers none do not consider any headers for computing cache key. Similarly, we have told that do not consider any cookies, and we have also told that do not consider any query string parameters. So here both these HTTP requests are different, but it will result in the same cache key because we told in the caching policy that headers are none, query string parameters are none, cookies are none. So it will not consider all these things, and both these HTTP requests will result in the same cache key. And if it results in the same cache key, what will happen? The cache hit will go high. Okay. The cache hit will go high. If we say that, no, in case if say for example, if I change this caching policy and I say consider query string parameters, okay. In this query string parameters also we can explicitly specify certain query string parameters that only consider this query string parameters, and rest of the query string parameters you can ignore. So if I say that if I change this setting, if I say if I change query string parameters, let's say uh, let's try to create a policy here. Actually, I didn't want to go into this much depth, but okay, it's fine. So these are some of the AWS managed caching policies. We will try to create our own caching policy. Here we can give a name to this caching policy. I will say uh, my custom caching policy, and then sure.
So Shubham, the cache is captured in the what we see the physical keys file which are generated in our system.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Salman?
The cache which is is captured in a cookie file which are physically generated, or cookies are
See, no.
different. Yeah.
See, cookies are different. Normally, what happens is what cookies are. See, cookies is something that is placed on the client's computer. When you try to
Correct.
access a web application, that web
Mhm.
application may say that in order for this web application to work perfectly, this application has to store some cookies on your browser. Do you accept cookies? You might have seen some privacy settings where they ask you to accept cookies, right? So you say accept cookies. So what happens is
Yeah.
when you accept cookies, these web application will store some tiny files on your computer. And
Right.
what those cookies contain, normally those cookie contain maybe sometimes a session key. Okay.
Mhm.
Sometimes those cookies would contain a session key. It might even contain certain other preferences. Like sometimes when you try to access a web application, it will ask you to select a country or maybe your currency. So all those settings or preferences might also be stored in your cookies.
Cook.
Okay. So
Got
every
it.
time you make a HTTP request, that cookie is also included in that HTTP request. And based on the content of the cookie, they will say, okay, what is your language preference? What is your currency preference? What is the country? And what is the session key? Based on those things, it might show you a different content. Okay.
Got it, Shubham. Yeah. Thank you.
So let's see. I think you guys are already aware. Last time when I tried to show you what host headers are, right? So similarly, I mean, other than host headers also, there are a lot of other headers, request headers. So essentially what caching policies lets you decide, lets you decide, I mean, what will be considered when cache key is when cache key is calculated. Okay. The lesser attributes you include, the higher is the chance that there will be a higher cache hit. Okay. So if you disable all things, if we say that do not consider any headers, do not consider any cookies, if we say do not consider any query string parameters, then what CloudFront essentially will look at, it will only look at the object name, and it will only use object name to calculate the cache key. And so here, if we see, even though these HTTP requests are very different in nature because the query string parameters are different, some of the headers are different, both of them are resulting in the same cache key, and since both of them are resulting in the same cache key, there is a higher there is a higher higher cache hit ratio. Okay, now but there might be a requirement that you do not maybe. Now what could be the use case where you might have to change it? The use case would be something like, maybe your origin request, maybe your origin server, sorry, maybe your origin server looks for a specific host, looks for a specific request header. Okay, maybe assume assume your origin web server, it looks for a specific request header called as language. Okay, and based on this request header, whether it is en or whether it is maybe de, and based on different values of this language header, it gives a different, it basically sends out a, it sends out an HTML page configured in, or it sends out a HTML page based on the language header. If in the HTTP request header, if in the HTTP request header language, the value is en, the origin web server sends out a page in English. Okay, and if the value in language request header is de, it responds with a, it responds with an HTML page configured in German. Okay, so now if in our caching policy, if we disable what, if we disable the headers, right, just like in caching optimized policy, if you see this one, let's I mean, there's no need to create a caching policy. We can take an example of this one, say for example caching optimized. Okay, in case we are using this, it says headers none, right? But basically different users are maybe making different requests in which they include a header called language, and they put values according to their language preference. So if we do not include headers, if we do not use headers for computing the cache key, it would ignore that the language header is set to de or en, and both of the requests would result in the same cache key. And what might happen is the cached object is maybe is in English, and it will respond with the HTML page written in English. Okay, so does this make sense to you guys, what I'm trying to say? Niyati, you are very
Yes.
Yes,
quiet.
quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so these are, I mean, if people who are from developer background, they would understand this much, but in our case we don't have to worry, but I'm just explaining. So here let's try to do it again. So I will say what is my origin? My origin is this bucket, and here what I will say is this is the identifier which uniquely identifies this origin. I will say yes, I want to use a origin access identity. I think we have already created some origin access identity, so let's use this. And I will say yes, please update the bucket policy as well. And here I will come here and I will say any HTTP request coming to this CloudFront distribution, please redirect it to HTTPS. And then allowed HTTP methods. No need to allow these additional HTTP methods because the origin is a static. Uh, the origin is basically serving static content, so no need to enable these additional HTTP methods. You would be enabling this if the origin server is either an application load balancer or maybe an EC2 instance which is running a web application which basically, hands out, which dynamically renders HTML based on certain attributes, and which allows maybe sign in functionality, sign out functionality, so something like that. And then this caching policy, we are already aware that there are several caching policies which AWS has pre-created for us, but we can also create our own custom policy. We can say create policy, and we can basically specify that what the CloudFront should consider while computing cache key, whether or not the CloudFront should consider HTTP headers, whether CloudFront should consider any query string parameters, or whether it should consider any cookies. So basically, assume if I say cookie, so essentially HTTP request with the same cookie would result in same cache key. If there is any another HTTP request, it is requesting for the same object, but the cookie associated with that HTTP request is different, then it will again make a request to the origin server because the cache key would be different. Okay. So this is what caching policies are. There are some caching policies already created by AWS for us. We can use them, or we can create our own caching policies. There is caching optimized caching policy, which is recommended for S3 origins. That is why I'm using this caching policy. If there is another caching policy called as caching disabled, this you would use if your origin server is a web server which is dynamic in content, which is dynamic in nature, or if it's an application load balancer. So we'll go with caching optimized. Then I will go to additional settings, and let's see. This is something totally optional. There is something called as Lambda on edge, and we haven't discussed Lambda, and this is unlikely to come in the exam. This is something very advanced, and we will not be doing it here. But of course, Lambda will cover separately. And here we have the price class, whether to use all edge location. This gives the best performance, of course, or you want to use only North America and Europe. Assuming maybe you have a customer base only in North America and Europe, then there is no point in using all edge locations. So similarly, based on where your customer base is, you will select the right price class. If your web application is being accessed from across the globe, then you use all edge locations. Okay. And here, this alternate domain name. Okay. This is something which is important because we do not like to access this CloudFront with the CloudFront ugly URL. So I will associate the domain name with which I want to access this CloudFront distribution. So I will put shubhamjoshi.xyz. Okay. Now, if I simply associate this, but I do not associate an SSL certificate, then what will happen is when I will try to access the CloudFront distribution with this domain name, it is going to give me a big error message in my browser. It would say that the called URL is different and the certificate presented is different. So we should also specify a corresponding SSL certificate. We have already created that SSL certificate in North Virginia region through ACM. So I will say I will select this ACM certificate, and I will say that's pretty much it. And here also we have to put the default root object. It is similar to indexed document in S3 bucket. So when we enable static website hosting on an S3 bucket, it asks you to put a index document. So typically you put index.html. So that implies that if you do not explicitly specify an object name at the end, it will serve you index.html. So the same goes here. If you're trying to access a CloudFront distribution URL and you do not explicitly specify an object, then what should CloudFront return? So in our case, I will say it should return index.html. And I will say you can give a description, and we are good to create a distribution here. And now we'll see in some time, hopefully it's enabled. That's good. No, but here we see it is currently deploying. So currently it is in deploying state. I think we have to wait for 3-4 minutes, and then it will be changed to maybe enabled or something like that. So let's refresh. So any questions so far what CloudFront is, in what cases it might help? And this also might be an exam question. Some people, get confused thinking that CloudFront is only for distributing static content, but that is not the case, right? CloudFront can also be used for serving or distributing dynamic content. The important thing to note is you can disable caching for dynamic content. In fact, you have to do it. But the good part is, even if you disable the caching, there will still be a improvement in the latency, because the only time the end user is traversing through the internet is from his computer till the edge location. From the edge location till the origin server, it is AWS backbone network, which is much faster and reliable as compared to the public network, which is internet. Okay, and a CloudFront distribution can have more than one origins. We can configure behavior. We can say that anything ending in star.php, if we can say something like if viewer request is for any object ending in star.php, then the origin server should be the application load balancer. If the viewer request is for any object ending in .jpeg or .png, then the origin server should be the S3 website. And we already know what viewer request is and what origin request is. Viewer request is something basically end user computer makes to the edge location or to the CloudFront distribution. This is called as viewer request. And the request that edge location makes to the origin server, that is called as origin request. Okay, caching policies, we are already aware of what caching policies are. So caching policies basically defines how CloudFront computes cache key, and the lesser attributes we put in a caching policy, the higher is the hit ratio. Okay, so if we disable headers, if we say do not consider headers, do not consider query string parameters, or do not consider cookies for cache key computation, then of course there will be a higher cache hit. So the higher the cache hit, the better is the performance. But there may be certain requirements where you can't go with everything disabled. For example, I told you that a web server or a region web server might be checking the HTTP request for a specific HTTP header, example language. So based on the language request header, it might respond with different web pages written in different languages. So if we do not include HTTP headers in the cache key computation, if we disable in the cache policy, what would happen is two different HTTP requests which has different language header, which has both different values. Maybe one HTTP request has language header as en, the other HTTP request is also for the same object, but this HTTP request has a header called language, but the value is de. So if we disable header in the caching policy, what would happen is both these requests would result in the same cache key, and then this CloudFront would assume that okay, it is the same object, it is already cached, and it will return that object, but that might not be the correct object. Okay. So any doubts?
No, Shubham.
No,
Okay,
sure,
great.
no.
Not as of now.
Okay, great. So we now have this CloudFront distribution URL. Now let's try to open it. So we can see we are able to access it, and we can see there is a SSL certificate also. But this is something ugly. I don't want to use it, right? So what I will do is, again, I will create a Route 53 record. And can somebody tell me what kind of a record I will have to create? Is it a CNAME record or an alias record?
Alias record.
Name we
Yes.
already
Alias
created,
record, I
right?
think. Yeah, alias record.
It has to be an alias record because we are not, because we generated SSL certificate for shubhamjoshi.xyz, not for
Apex
www.shubhamjoshi.xyz.
domain.
Right, this is the Apex domain, so we have to use alias. Okay, so I will say this is an A type record, but this is an alias. Okay, and then I will say choose endpoint. This is an alias to what? This is an alias to a CloudFront distribution. Then we can select this is the CloudFront distribution, and here we can say create record, and then hopefully in some time it will be active. And now Let's see if we can access it actually. Let's see. It may take some time. Okay, perfect. See, here we see that we are able to access it. It has a valid certificate also installed. If I see, it says issued to this domain, issued by Amazon. It is valid for approximately maybe 12 months. So this could be the best architecture you can have for a static website. We are hosting the website
Can you
where,
click again the certificate?
sure.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And this is being served from, this is being distributed by CloudFront network, right? And now depending upon from which part of the world anybody is accessing it, it will be directed to different edge locations and it will be cached there. So it doesn't have to, the request doesn't have to traverse to Asia Pacific, Mumbai. So we can also see if you want to see whether or not there is a
Reena.
cache. So here I will show you whether how you can find out that it is being served from CloudFront or not, and whether or not there is a cache hit or cache miss. Okay, so let's try to do it. If I try to do curl hyphen verbose hyphen v, I will say https shubhamjoshi.xyz. So let's see. So I'm able to get the response. Now see what response headers we got. Okay. So here, these are the HTTP request headers, which my curl included in the HTTP request. So these are something that you see outward. These are the arrows pointing outward. So these are what HTTP request headers. These things which are pointing inwards, the inwards arrow. These are the HTTP response headers. Okay, and here, so these are different HTTP response headers. As I told you that this could be one HTTP response header, which is content type is what text.html. Okay, so here you can see. Okay, so here it says via, and this is via CloudFront. Okay, and Xcache. This is another response header which says it is miss from CloudFront. Okay, and why? Maybe now let's try. If I keep doing it, then maybe the next one should be hit from cache. The current one, the one we sent now, it is a miss from cache. Now again, I will try to do the same thing. Let's hope that this time it is a hit from cache. Okay, again it is also saying miss from CloudFront. Let's see. This time we'll see. So here we can see now Xcache. This is the response header. The value is hit from CloudFront. So this time we are making a request. The CloudFront has detected that it's already cache. So it has basically served from the edge location itself. So this is how you can see whether or not it is being served via CloudFront and whether or not there is a cache hit or cache miss. So any questions on either Amazon Certificate Manager or CloudFront? No?
No, Shubham. I think once we hit
No,
this,
Shubham.
Okay, great. So
Right.
I mean, is it too complicated or it's fine? I mean, it makes sense to you guys.
It is
On a high level, it makes sense, right? Maybe the
It-
low level.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, it will take us to like time to this thing.
Okay, great. So now the last topic that I want to cover, probably your favorite one, is RDS. So do you want me to cover it? We
I would
can
suggest.
not to.
Monday. Let's start a new topic.
This
Okay.
cache vision is out of my
Our
cache now.
cache is full now.
Okay. Okay. Fine then.
Cache miss
We are
was
good
good.
with this. Yeah, this is a cache miss.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will have to go with the recording again.
The only thing I would suggest is, just try creating this CloudFront distribution and do
Yeah.
not, dwell too much into these tiny options, because each option would have a, associated theory behind it. You have to read a lot.
Mhm. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from
Sure, Shubham. Yeah.
exam perspective also,
Yeah.
I mean, these low level questions, you are not going to get it. Just high level concepts you should be aware of, that what could be the use cases for CloudFront. You should be aware that CloudFront is not just for serving static content, but also dynamic content, and what kind of benefits CloudFront can provide you. And let's discuss the pricing of CloudFront. So CloudFront, they charge you uh, based on the data transfer out from CloudFront and the number of HTTP or HTTPS requests. Okay. So these are the two attributes on which they will charge you. So basically, maybe something like, if there will be like 100 GBs of data transfer out via CloudFront is this much in and so based on the amount of data transferred out via CloudFront, and the other is the number of HTTP or HTTP requests a CloudFront has processed. So these are the two attributes on which AWS charges us for CloudFront usage. Okay. It's okay. Fine then. We will close
Okay.
it for today,
Sure,
and
Shubham.
we'll.
Sure, Shubham.
Okay then. Thanks everyone. Have a nice
Thank you.
evening.
Have a
Sure.
nice
Thanks,
Thank
weekend.
Shubham. Yeah. Have a nice weekend. Bye. Good night.
Okay. Yeah. Bye bye.
Night.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Have a nice day.